So I'm a property owner, and I've been a property owner for some years now, and I've recently transitioned to becoming a landlord. In that period of time, I've honestly had some regrets in terms of property ownership, and I've shared this with you in one of my videos. And on today's video, I really just want to bring you in terms of just where my thoughts are, or basically how did I even get here to even feel like this was a mistake for me. And I'm also hoping that by me sharing my experience, the things that I'm struggling with as a property owner or as a landlord, it's going to help someone there who wants to invest in property or who is investing in property. Maybe we can share, in the comment section and console each other, to those that do own properties that do feel like it is just too heavy. It's not as simple as how it has been explained, because to a certain extent, I do feel like we have been lied to when it comes to property ownership. It is not as simple, as straightforward as it has been put. It's also not an easy way of just making money and making profits. Instead, it is an easy way of losing money. But those things are not normally shared with us. We are normally encouraged to own properties and to, generate income through properties. But then what if those properties are not generating the income? What if those properties end up becoming a burden on you? How do you keep on going? How do you navigate all of that, And I wish that information was there, because what I've noticed is that there is information on property ownership and so forth. However, it's just not detailed. People don't really share the real struggles of, okay, these are the real struggles of owning property. And as a result, a lot of us, we get into it with our hopes up, and then when we get into it, we realize that it is actually not what we thought it was. So on today's video, I'm going to just be breaking down basically my experience. This is not to say this is someone else's experience. This is my experience. And when I shared a story on Instagram on my experience when it comes to property ownership, a lot of people could relate that are owning properties, that are landlords. They could relate, and we were sharing the same sentiments. So I'm hoping that on this video, in the comment section, we can also share some tips and tricks in terms of how can we navigate this space, So with that being said, let us get into it. But before we do that, let me firstly introduce myself. My name is Jennifer. I'm a content creator, currently self-employed. I do run my own business. In this channel, we create personal finances, lifestyle, as well as career growth content. So if any of those things are things that interest you and you really like my content, do make sure that you click that red subscribe button on the bottom, and also don't forget to smash the like button if you enjoy my videos, and also do share or comment, and I will do my best to always get to each and every comment. Sometimes I don't get to each and every one of them, but I do make sure that at least 80% of your comments I do respond to. And also, thank you so much to 65,000 subscribers. I cannot believe it. I look at the numbers every day. I'm just like, what's going on? It is so unbelievable. 65,000 subscribers in this community. Absolutely amazing. And at the rate that we're going, I can see that we're going to close off this year with 70,000 subscribers. And so thank you to each and every one of you that have joined this family. I really hope that you enjoy this content. I hope that you do find value in this content as well. So with that being said, let us go right into it. So I'm going to give you a background on terms of my property journey. How did I even come here? When I was on level 8, I decided that I wanted to buy myself a property. And that was because I had been renting for a while here in Pretoria, and I felt like, okay, it's time for me to take it up the notch. It's time for me to buy property, And it's something that I've always liked, guys. I'm one of those people that will sit on Property 24 or private property and look at property even till today. Buying property for me was not something that was strange to me, something that I knew that eventually I was going to do. I was just waiting for me to be able to afford to buy property. At first, I was just drowning in a lot of debts, and I wanted to get rid of those debts before I could buy my property, and I did exactly that. And then I bought my property, and that's the only property that I have under my name. And if I'm being honest with you, I want to have more properties. However, because of my experience with this property, it is making me second guess a lot of things, and it is making me question a lot of things, and I'm hoping that I can get over that. So when the property was listed online, it was selling for 600,000, and then I placed an offer of 530,000. And the reason why I placed an offer of 530,000 is because When I looked at the property, it had, ever since it was built in 2010, no renovations had ever been done. It was in a good condition. However, it still needed work in terms of just bringing it up to life again. So I placed an offer that I felt like, okay, this is something that when I look at the property, this is something that I feel like I want. This is the price that I want to get into. Remember, when you buy a property, as much as the property can say it's $1 million, does not mean that you put an offer of $1 million. You do that. You don't do that. You never do that in property buying. You come in at a lower price, and then you hope that there is wiggle room for you to negotiate. Another thing is that I started looking at this property online sometime in the beginning of the year, and I kept looking at it, and I kept seeing that it's still in the market. In November, the property was still in the market. And then that's when I decided to go and view it. And I had been actually having my eye on it for some time. For over 6 months, I had been looking at this property online, and I just liked it, but then I never went to view it. And then when I went in November, it was still on the market. So that also does count, how long the property has been on the market, because if it has been there for a long time, it means that that property is just not moving, and that means that people are not interested in it. And if people are not interested in it, allows you as the buyer to come in with the offer that you feel like it's something that you want to put on the table. And because it has been on the market for some time, the seller is also open to negotiate, because they're thinking, we have been having this property for some time now in the market, we need to move it. So I came in and I said 530, that was my offer, right? The seller did not accept my offer, but also did not decline to say, you know what, when you are playing with us, from 600,000 to 530, what are you thinking? Instead, they came in with a counter offer and they said 560. And I said, no, 550. So you see, there were negotiations, and I was willing to walk away. Like, I was not invested in this property and so forth. I was willing to walk away. If they were not accepting the 550 that I wanted to put on that I put on the table, I was willing to walk away, which I also think that also does help when you're buying property. Be willing to walk away. Don't be invested in your property buying journey. And then they accepted it. And then the process started. So I bought the property, as much as it was selling for 600,000. And normally when you sell a property at that price, it's because it's evaluated to be around that price, right? Either slightly below and then you add your own profit, or it's actually evaluated at that price or even more. So I bought it at 550. However, when then my bank was looking at the property, it was actually valued at 650. So already I was buying the property at a positive, because what the property was worth and what I bought it as, there was already a positive on it. So that was great. I honestly enjoyed that part. It also taught me the whole process of buying property. So here I'm going to share with you what are the costs that are associated with buying property. And this is for someone that has never bought property and does want to buy property eventually. So the first one is the cost of the actual buying of the property. So there's the cost, which is the bond. So for me, it was 550,000, right? However, then there are the costs that are associated to that, which is the registration cost and the transfer cost. So those costs you have to be liable for. Not sure if I paid for both registration or transfer, but I do know that when I was registering the property, I needed to pay for that, right? So that goes to the lawyers, and it's not a small amount. This is also linked to how much the property is. So the higher your property, the higher the cost will be in terms of the registration cost. The lower your property, the lower the cost will be in terms of the registration cost of that property. So you need to think about that as well. So my costs were around the 27,000 for the registration of this property that I had to pay to the lawyers. And that's something that you need to have to pay. I know one person who was buying property and then they were short with money to pay and then they started borrowing around. I just feel like you don't do that. It also shows signs that you are not ready in terms of buying this property, So for me, I made sure that by the time I was buying this property, I also had the money. But the money, where did I get it from? I borrowed it from the bank. That's how I did it. It's not like I was sitting with savings, but in most cases, you want to be saving so that you can be able to have that money. And make sure that you save about 40,000 for this cost, and then hopefully the cost come down to be lower. Then you are left with some money. But for me, I didn't have any savings. Like, guys, when I went into buying this property, I just went head in. If I'm being honest, I went head in. I just said, "Sobona pambili." That's the first cost. Then the second one is the rates and levies. If you stay in a complex, you find that there will be rates and levies, and these will depend on the body corporate. Also, even if it's a standalone, you'll find that there will be rates, but not levies, but there will be rates, so you would have to pay those rates. So for me, what I was doing when I was looking for the property, I was looking for a property that had reasonable rates. Like, when I was looking, I didn't want anything that had rates of over 1.5, rates of 2,000, because here in Pretoria, you will find a lot of properties that you find that it's affordable. But then when you look at the rates, you look closely at the rates per month, you find that it's 2,000, 1,800. That will eat away on you each and every month when you start having to pay for it, So you need to also look, as you are looking for properties, you're also looking at the other costs that are related to that property ownership. When I was buying this property, the rates were below 1,000. I think they were 800 and something, So I was like, okay, I'm comfortable with that. And then there's also the municipality rates, and that's something that I did not pay attention to. That as much as I'm paying for the rates and levies here, but I still have to pay for the municipality rates as well. And I did not pay for, I think, 2 years that I was not paying. By the time I went to the municipality to check what is going on, then I found out that I was owing 10,000 of municipality rates. So they do go up. As much as the amount may be slow, but they do go up. Also, this depends on the municipalities. I know that with my husband, where he owns his property, the municipality rates are not like cheap. Like, they are not cheap like mine here in Pretoria. So depends on the municipality that they will charge based on the area and so forth. So they are not the same everywhere, but you do need to pay for municipality rates. So I had to cough up the 10,000 so that I clear out that debt, because you don't want to be owing the municipality the money for rates. You just don't want to do that. So eventually I did pay for that. Now each and every month I just pay. I'm going to share with you my experience, or basically my thoughts in all the information that I've shared with you. The process of buying property, the costs that were associated with it, me staying in the property, if I'm being honest with you, I had no problem with it. I was able to afford each and everything. And that was because when I went into the process of buying the property, I really looked at my finances and what I can afford. It was not a bother for me. And also, I'm the one who was staying in the property. And so for me, I didn't have to worry about maintenance and so forth, because a minor thing like wanting to paint, I would do that myself. I painted my own property. Whenever I needed to do some work, except if it's like really like severe things, which was only when I was doing the renovations that I found that, okay, I had to, outsource those services. But in majority of the cases, when I was staying there, it was honestly fine. And I was eventually able to do some work on the property. Like, I changed the bathroom, I worked on the bathroom, I changed the tiles, I also cemented the walls because they had exposed brick in the bedrooms, and I just cemented that up. And I just gave it a new look. Like, it really gave it a new look. So for me, when I was staying in the property, I really enjoyed it. And I wouldn't say that it was a drag for me while I was staying there. Really loved my property. Even now, I would go back to stay there because it's just a nice property. It's small, it's manageable and everything. Pashash. I decided to turn this property that I was staying in my primary property, I decided to turn it into a rental, basically become a landlord. So it no longer became my primary property. Now, sometimes just because you're staying in the property, it's easy to think, oh no, everything is fine, everything is working well and so forth. You also learn to navigate certain things are just not a train smash for you because you're thinking it's a livable thing, Like, I remember one of the lights in the kitchen, like when you switch it on, it will take few seconds for it to switch on. But then now when you then have a tenant, it comes with different dynamics, because tenants have different expectations, different things that they want, the different ways that they want things to be. That light taking a few seconds to switch on may be a problem to a tenant, and that becomes a cost to you now that you need to change that. One of the things there was a handle in a drawer came out, and then they were like, maintenance. I'm thinking to myself, bruh, you are a whole man. You mean to tell me that you don't know how to put back a handle? But now because someone is renting, they're thinking, I don't want to touch anything, then that becomes a cost on you. So that, for me, that's when things shifted. When now I became a landlord and no longer staying in my property, then that's when I got a whole view of the other costs that are associated with owning property and actually becoming a landlord, which actually made me want to pull out my hair, which made me have so many regrets and actually want to sell my property. Because initially when I was like, okay, I'm leaving this property, I'm going to rent it out for this price, I was hoping that, okay, it will cover my bond cost and then I would be able to add on top to cover the rest. That didn't happen. So I'm going to bring you guys through now the transition where I'm now a landlord, because many people, when we buy a property, we're not planning to stay in them forever. We're planning to stay in them for a few years and then transition to actually having that become an investment that brings in money. So then you move into the next one, or you buy another one, you stay in that for few months, and then you buy another one. The charging of rent, you guys. The charging of rent, I thought it would be simple. I said, I want this much, because I'm thinking my bond costs me this much. So if I charge this much of rent, at least I know that my bond will be covered, right? So I go in there, have an agency, and then I say, this is how much I want to charge. Then the agency comes and they take their own percentage. And remember, the agency would take 10% of what I was charging. So by the time the money comes to me, I still needed to top up to pay for the bond. So it was no longer covering the bond that I was paying to the bank, but I needed to top up in order for me to cover the total amount of the bond. And that was around 900 that I needed to add, just so that I can cover the amount that I'm expected to pay to the bank. That was also the first part of the downhill, because now I'm thinking, okay, now in my pocket I need to have 900 rands to top up every month. Then I would have to pay for my rates and levies, right? Because obviously the money that is coming in does not even come close to covering the bond. So that means that the rates and levies were no longer 800 now they were now over 1,200. I have to pay for that. I have to from my own pocket pay for that 1,200. The municipality rates, I have to pay for that. My municipality rates were around 360 or 340, and I had to pay for that. But now the trick also here is that there was this time, I don't know what happened. My municipality rate came to be 900 and something. I'm like, how did we jump from 300 and something to 900 and something? That did not make sense to me, but I had to pay for that. You can't argue with the municipality. Once they say, okay, this, you have to, because for me, it's not like they come and read the meters and so forth. It's not those things where you can go and negotiate and say, what. They don't do that. The water and electricity, it's all bundled up under the another agency where you pay for that. So a tenant will pay for that. The water and electricity, they will pay for that. And then you have a tenant in there, and the tenant keeps asking for maintenance things, lights, problem with the lights, a globe. Sometimes I don't get, maybe because I've been a tenant for such a long time and I've owned property and I know how it feels. I'm a tenant right now. We didn't buy where we came, when we came here, and we decided that we're not going to buy because we're just like, we bought our first properties, both of us, we have properties under our names. There is no need for us to then go and buy another property right now. Let's go and rent. Let's see what's there. Let us experience different properties in different areas, and then when we feel like, okay, as a family, this is what works for us, then we'll buy a property. So right now we are renting and we have no intentions of buying. But as a tenant right now, I know that if I have a problem with the globe, I just have to look at the type of globe that they have, and then I need to go and buy that, unless it is those advanced globes that I I can't just go and buy and change myself. But if it's a normal globe, I can look at the type of globe, go buy the globe, replace it. I don't need to call the agency to ask for them to change the globe, But then you'll find tenants that will actually do that. They will ask for the smallest thing. Like, as I said, you broke the handle. It's not me. You took the handle out. The handle was there when you moved in, but then you stayed in there, and then a few months later, the handle came out. But then instead of you fixing it, you decide, I'm going to call an agent to say you need to fix that. Then that becomes a problem. It was just minor things that just came. They kept coming every month. And every time these things come, you're thinking, what the hell? And every time when you have an agency and they say they will fix these things, they're not for free. So every time there's a call out where you say, okay, go and fix those things, do know that they will be charging on the money that you will be getting as a rent. So if you were supposed to get, when I was charging 7,000, and then already they take 10%, right? And then there will be these maintenance things that they will be taking. There's a call out fee, and then there's the work, the labor cost. So by the time I would get my rent being 4,000. Mind you, my bond is 7,000, but then I'll get my rent being 4,000 something. That happened, I think, for like 2 months, where I would get my money from the rental being 4,000. Sometimes it will even be lesser than that, Sometimes it will be 5,000 something. But then think about this. Bond is 7,000. I still have rates and levies, and then I'm getting my rent being half of what I actually asked it to be. So that for me used to frustrate me, because I'm just like, this is eating away on my capital. This is eating away on my money now. It's no longer an investment. This is a burden right now. And when I look at it, I think that the big impact was the type of the agency that I had. There was a point whereby I wrote them a very long message, because that tenant, the same tenant that kept asking for endless maintenance, when I say small things, guys, like I stayed in that property for over 3 years. I know it in and out. I started receiving complaints about this tenant, from the body corporate side now, not from the agent, from the body corporate, a list of issues that these people were things that they were doing. Little did I know that they were actually terrorizing my property. But then I received this list, and I would share it with the agent. The agent will not respond and so forth. And I remember I wrote them an email and said, it seems like your priority is only to the tenant, because I'm a landlord. I'm the owner of this property. This is my investment. I've entrusted it to you, but for some reason, you are not responding to me. I write to you, you say nothing. But then a tenant will come to you and say a handle of a cabinet is broken, and you are able to actually tell me that there is maintenance work that needs to be done. So when they have to get paid, they are quick for them to actually write to me. But then when I say that these are the issues that are being brought to me and so forth, you do not action that. And I was so frustrated. I was like, what kind of agents are you? Because you're supposed to be having a balance. You cannot be prioritizing a tenant and then leaving me hanging as a landlord. What about my investment? Because this is an investment for me. We are not playing here. This is money that is involved here. So having the right tenant will also either make or break your property ownership journey. Honestly, will either make or break your property ownership journey. And you can decide that you want to do it yourself, where you don't have an agency. But then now there are so many laws that are there that protect tenants, that protect tenants, and tenants can end up, you find if someone staying in your property without paying, someone shared on Instagram to say, hey, be careful with tenants, with the type of tenants that you have, because someone that they know had a tenant that ended up not wanting to pay, and they stayed there for over 6 months, not paying rent. And the law was on their side, and not because there was something at fault and what, but no, the law is in most cases will be on the side of a tenant. So I was just like, okay, I don't want to be the one that have to deal with tenants directly, because I don't know all of the laws that protect the tenants, and I don't want to have to worry about that. So I decided to get an agent. But then that agent that I got, honestly, they were the reason why it felt like being a property owner or being a landlord was a drag. Like it just was not working. It was because of how they managed the property. And as much as they did those upkeep and so forth, but then they were costing me a lot. Also, another thing that I'll talk about is the type of tenant that you have. Having the right tenant will either make or break your property ownership journey. So this tenant ended up being evicted, right? Then they left. When I got in there, found that they did things. My property was no longer that beautiful property that I left. The yard was no longer that beautiful yard that I left. The dogs had digged multiple holes on my yard. They had put cameras outside, which meant that they drilled massive holes on the walls that were connecting outside. Like I left that place in such a good condition. I remember I got someone to paint it. So when they then moved out, I had to do all of that work. I had to repaint the whole place. I had to, change the locks. I had to fix what was happening with the yard, even though the yard is really not much of my problem because that is managed by the body corporate. But I had to fix a lot of things. I was so disappointed and I was so hurt. And for me, honestly, I was just over it. I remember many times I would tell my husband that, I'm willing to let go of this property. I'm done. It is costing me, whenever I would sit down and look at the total cost that it cost me, it was a lot. A lot. So when I looked at it, I was just like, what's the point? I have a tenant there, but then first of all, I'm not getting the right amount of of rent that I'm supposed to be getting. I'm always getting rent that is less than what I'm supposed to be getting. And then there's also the cost of the rates and levies, and then also the municipality costs and so forth. Like, I'm just done. I was just over it, and I was willing to sell my property there and there, you guys. I was willing to sell it. But then I'm glad that I didn't sell it. See, because I also, after the tenant left, I realized that, okay, the issue was the tenant and also the agency. So what I decided to do was, after the tenant left, I decided to fire the agency. I was just like, I'm done with you. I don't want your services anymore. So I then got another agency. And then when I got this other agency, we communicated. So when I told them, okay, now that I have experience of what being a landlord is like, and having this type of an agency is like, and having this type of a tenant, I knew what to look for. So then I had my demands to say, this and this and this I do not want, this and this and this, yes, we can, it's okay, And then I was also clear in terms of, the costs that are associated with property. And because the agency manages a lot of property in my complex, they were so understanding. I remember they even said, we know the burden that come with property ownership, and we have, many properties that we manage here that are owned by a different person. And what we do is that as an agency, if we feel that, okay, this amount of percentage that we charge, because they charge 10% as well, it's high for you, we can put it down to 8%. I was just like, thank you for understanding. And then also with the issue of maintenance, what we do is that every 3 months we'll come in, we will then do the maintenance work, anything that needs to be done in intervals. We don't just randomly come in intervals. And then every 6 months, we also do come and inspect the property to see the condition while the tenant is there. I was like, great. I also do need that because this is my investment, And then the part of them doing the maintenance in intervals, I felt like that was going to be good for me, because then it allows me to plan financially, to know that, okay, the tenant came in and then there were no issues, right? Then fine, you stayed in there. But then now there are maintenance issues that you have brought maybe in 3 months. Then we're going to deal with those once in 3 months and deal with them. Then for me, it gives me room for me to plan financially. Instead of just randomly, every time a tenant says, this, all these minor things, And when I say minor things, I'm not talking about leaking in the taps and what. No, I'm talking of minor things, so I don't have to worry about that, and that doesn't have to eat on the money that I'm supposed to be receiving each and every month. I am in no rush to get a tenant in my place. I want to make sure that we get the right person, the right family, or the right couple that will stay in there. Sometimes it doesn't always go your way, but I'm no longer in a rush to just fill the property, because that other agent was always in a rush of just filling the property to a point whereby the type of tenant that they have did not really matter. So right now I still own my property, and I would say that it has been a turmoil. It hasn't been easy. I have so many regrets, and especially when it comes to the agency that I had, they were the biggest reason in me wanting to sell my property. And I'm glad that I did not sell my property. I'm glad that I fired them, because if I had kept them even for longer, I was going to end up selling my property, because they were, and their way of managing the property ended up costing me instead of it putting back in my pocket. My property will still not put anything back in my pocket for some time, until maybe I pay it off. But in it putting money in my pocket is just not going to happen. But I'm glad that I did not sell it. I'm still going to keep it, and I want to get more properties under my name. As I said, I'm constantly on Property 24 and looking at properties. So I'm still going to add more properties under my belt. Like, I really would love another property in KZN, somewhere in KZN, but I am in no rush. I now know the struggles of property ownership. I know that it is not as simple as people put it, and it's also not an easy way of making money. I actually make more money on the stock market than in property. Property cost me instead of putting money in my pocket. So right now, the whole thing of me being a landlord is just so that I can pay my bond. But then I still have to pay for everything else after that. So it's taking away from me and not putting anything from me. So if I had money, now it's just a token. If I had money and I was just like, okay, what should I invest in? Should I buy properties or should I invest or in stock? I would actually say go the JSE market first, because that will not take away from you. You are likely to make more money there in the JSE market than in property. Then you can diversify by getting property, but do not just focus solely on property ownership, because it does cost to have property ownership unless you're buying it cash, which also, when you buy it cash, it also does attract taxes. It attracts heavy taxes from SARS as well. So something that you have to think about. So unless you're buying it cash or you're building it cash and then you're having tenants and so forth, then you'll find that it will put something in your pocket. But if you're going to have a traditional bond, it will not put anything in your pocket. So something that you have to think about. So I'm hoping that this video did help someone that is really looking to become a property owner or a landlord. Things that you need to think about. This is not to deter you from property ownership. Do it. But what I would say is that don't put all your eggs in one basket and just have multiple properties and not having other types of investments. Have other types of investment that actually generates income for you, and then you can also diversify by getting properties. But also the types of properties that you have is also just as important. Right now, I really would like to have property in a township where I have multiple units. I feel like those are the type of properties that I would like to experience with now and see what is it like to be a landlord in a township where you have multiple units. Does it really put money in your pockets, or does it take money away from your pockets? So with that being said, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video and you found it to be insightful. If you have any words of encouragement, if you have any tips and tricks, if you are a property owner and also you are a landlord, and there are things that there are ways that you have found that they help you navigate this journey, please share with them on the comment section. I really would appreciate them, because they will help me a lot, and I also do know that they will help someone else who might be reading that comment, who might be in the same position that I was in, and it's just looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, because this is not easy. This is not easy at all. So with that being said, I'm going to leave it right here. I'll see you on the next one. Please take care and stay safe. Bye.